Oh, that was a bill.
It could well be. Good evening, everybody. I think it's 7 o'clock, so we'll get started. Thank you to everybody for coming, including a very impressive number of members of the public, despite the fact that I think there's some conflicting entertainment, as some of us have been watching online at the moment. But,
entertainment.
I just want to start with a couple of sort of announcements. Firstly, despite what it says on the agenda, we will be discussing all items in public. There won't be any exclusion of the public or press.
Hurrah!
Good. Well done. We all said that.
But the paper about Vectors Hall, that's paper I think, will remain confidential because there's some information in it that councillors have access to but have been asked not to refer to specifically because it's commercially sensitive. So we'll still have the discussion openly, and Michael's motion will also be discussed in public. Just one other point about the public. Steve's presentation on the Neighbourhood Board, this will be just for, he'll present it, and there'll be possibility for councillors to ask questions, but not, I'm afraid, for member of the public. Thanks to the Ryde Society, I think most people here had an opportunity to ask them questions, and we're not going to submit it to that twice. So, just to remind you of, to remind councillors, please, if you want to speak, raise your hand, and please don't speak too unnecessarily long, and please keep to the point. And can I ask everybody, councillors and members of the public, please don't have your own conversations, because it can be very distracting for people if there's whispering going on or whatever. So, right, so thank you very much. We can now start with public questions. Who would like to ask a question? Steve, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I ask, please, how many Ryde Town Council staff are seconded to Ryde Neighbourhood Board? Thank you.
Nobody is seconded at the moment, are they? At least nobody at all.
Okay. I understood there was some. Was there an arrangement in the past which has perhaps now lapsed?
There was an arrangement whereby Alan, who seems to have was seconded for a period of time, and we were paid for that. Right, please. Yeah, but that was under the previous arrangements, not currently.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I know I saw Adrian and Stella. Adrian, your question.
Yeah, could Ryde Town Council make contact with Whitelink about the lighting down the pier? I mean, that's been out of action. A lot of it's been out of action for ever since the new walkway was done, and then presently they've got diesel generators there with lighting towers on. I mean, after 2 years of hiring those and running them, that surely had to have gone a long way to getting the lighting repaired in the first place. I mean, there's terrible dark spots down there at night.
I imagine it's still related to the repair work that's still going on. I don't know if you know anything, Phil, do you?
I don't know, I'll find out.
Okay, thank you. Stella.
My question is again about the Neighbourhood Board. One I didn't manage to ask on. Yes, I thought they were supposed to use in-house capacity. And where can we, as the public, find the expenditure of the Neighbourhood Board and its budget for the next 6 months? So I'd like to know where is the expenditure and who are place parks, please?
I could answer about place parks, but maybe I could ask Steve if you could note those points and possibly take note of space. Place parks are the consultancy company that have been doing the consultation.
They're not a company. They're not a company.
Well, it's the brand name, is it, of the company?
Partnership between Matthews Associates and ERMC.
Right, okay. Right. So ERMC are the main one is a consultant and
about the outcomes and transparency of the board. The only thing that seemed to come out of the questions that they had to answer was a project that they've been working on to have a sports centre 3 miles out of Ryde at the cricket club on the way to Brading. And the boundaries, I believe, have been moved to accommodate this. And I'm concerned about this. I was chair of the RBA in 1987 when the Queen came, and those were good times, obviously. But I've seen so many projects. I was a member of the Ryde Development Trust. We had the Ryde Interchange Report. We've had the HAS. There's been so many projects where grant money was raised, and a lot of it turned up a load and load of paper and very little outcome. So I'm very concerned about the neighbourhood board at the moment. So I'm asking the town councillors to be very conscious of what's going on and urge you to really look into these things. And when the projects come up, I hope we'll all have a chance to actually look at them and see how they will benefit Ryde for the residents and the businesses, for the well-being of us all, really. That's all I have to say. It's a historical thing, which I've seen it happen so many times, and I hate to see it happen again.
thank you. I think that point is well taken, and I suspect some of the councillors may. So I won't try and answer in any detail, except that at the moment, no decisions have been made about future projects, including that one. Yes, sir, I've forgotten you.
It's Nigel.
Yeah, Nigel.
Madam Mayor, councillors, thank you. You'll be pleased to know I don't have a question about the neighbourhood board tonight. I just actually wanted to come along and thank the town council. I believe that you made some contribution towards the Steampunk Festival. And I wanted to underline, I've done this, or suggested this many occasions, how great it was that it was on the Western Gardens. Now, I fully understand that you don't own the Western Gardens, so there's no monetary comeback from that, and the Eastern Gardens you do. However, as I've got a hospitality business in Union Street, it was very apparent, particularly on the Saturday, that the people at the Steampunk Festival were generally feeding up into the town, supporting the local businesses. We were, I would say, about 80% up on the Saturday
Brilliant.
previous to in last year. So I'd like to say that if any more support in future years can be given, that would be fantastic. And if it can be held on the Western Gardens alongside any other events. I mean, obviously the scooter rally traditionally sits on the green. That's their spot. But, you know, any other events maybe that could be put that way, I think it would greatly benefit the town. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to get a message like that. As some people know, I opened the Steampunk Festival and did say that we were so pleased that it would be benefiting local businesses.
Were you dressed as a rabbit? Because there seemed to be a lot of those about.
It was
Yes, one of those might be no. I made an attempt at pumping, including my mayor's.
It was
well done. It was a great event for
It was
Ryde.
brilliant. It was amazing. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, sorry. Helen?
In the last week's county press, there was a remark that was on the below-the-line comments suggesting that the IsleOfWight Council would retain 25% of the money awarded via the neighbourhood board to Ryde. Can someone confirm or deny whether or not that's true?
Sorry, say that again. That the town council would
No, IsleOfWight.
Isle of Wight Council.
would retain 25%.
Yes, I was puzzled myself, and I wondered where the information came from.
Can you answer that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely not based on fact at all.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is, there is £20 million, of which 15 million is capital and 5 million is revenue. So that's that's 25%. And I think someone has just gone, well, the IsleOfWight Council are going to swallow that up then. Without it basis any facts, I would stress that the board members will be looking very closely into how all that revenue money is spent, and no, it won't just be carved off to any organisation at all like that.
Good to know. Thanks.
so we can now go on.
Oh,
Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor, sorry, I didn't actually get an answer as to where we can actually find the figures.
Well, we're hoping that
Was
Steve
we would actually
yeah,
put that in?
bear that in mind. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not, I'm a member of the board, but right. Apologies. We've had a few apologies.
Councillor Stevens,
Right.
is unwell, recovering from lockdown.
Councillor Luciano.
Councillor Luciani,
Karen.
Councillor Charles Chapman,
Unwell.
and Councillor Dawn.
Thank you very much.
Chapman.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Any declarations of interest? No. Any requests for dispensations?
None received.
Thank you. Right, so now we hand over to our guest speaker, Steve, who's going to give us an update on what's happening with the board and be available to answer any questions from councillors. Thank you.
Hi everybody. Yes, so I think my brief was to go right back to the beginning and take the councillors through the whole process so everyone has an idea of everything that's happened from now to where we are, and then I'll give some more details on the questions which come up from the floor to address those. So yeah, the scheme started under the Conservative government as part of their policy to give back to different towns across the country, and the original brief was very short in terms of time. There was only a very short period of time to get the original board put together. Then there was a very short period of time with which to put the plan together and do the consulting with the general public. And that was based on the guidelines that the Conservative government gave at that time. It wasn't ideal by any means, and it didn't allow us to do the full processes we would like to have done, but the times were very short, and that's simply, we had to meet at those times when they were given. There was a lot of interest in terms of joining the board. Unlike a lot of the towns, I've been up to a few meetings with the other 75 chairs, and one of the feedbacks from them is it's been quite hard to get people on the board. There hasn't been a lot of interest within their towns. I would say we're the opposite. We've had a huge amount of people wanting to be involved, large amount of people applying for the board. So it's actually been really encouraging from the start in terms of the amount of people who are interested and wanting to be involved. And I think that reflects well on the town from the start. When we did get started, we had to go through a period of consultation with the community, the wider community. And again, the timeframes for that weren't ideal. They weren't long enough to do all that we want to do. So we had to go through quite quickly to get the numbers in as quickly as we could and be as broad as we can, which we did. I think it was around 1,000 applications, give or take, we got back, which again was very high compared to a lot of the other towns, the other 75 towns. When we heard about some of the best practices, one of the people giving their presentation on best practice on consultation were less than 1,000 for a town a lot bigger than ours. So again, we actually had pretty good numbers in terms of feedback at that time. We then had to get on with writing the plan, which we, going to Stella's point a little bit, in terms of using consultants. We had 2 people tender for that process. It was put out to tender, out to anybody who wanted to tender. 2 very good responses. One of them was a pure mainland response, and one of them was a collaboration between an IsleOfWight company and a mainland company, setting up their own new group to pitch for the project. And largely on the basis they were both very good and there wasn't a lot between them, the deciding factor was to support the IsleOfWight business, which was part of the tendering process. So that's how Place Spark were chosen, based on their skills, their ability, island knowledge, and in fact they were an island-based business. But there were only 2 businesses which tendered. And there wasn't opportunity to do that in-house because the skills required to do it were quite specific and quite extensive. The plan was up and running. We probably got about halfway through at the point that the election was called. When they called the election, the plan was put on hold by the government on the basis that we could carry on if we wanted to, but there was no guarantee that there was any money coming for it, and there was no guarantee that it would carry on post the election result. When the election result came, we were advised by the new government to leave everything on hold because they needed to do their budget review. That budget review was at the back end of last year, at which point, post that, we were told that there would be a plan to continue, but we had to wait again until we knew more. We were then well into the new year before the first information started to trickle down. At that point, we then re-engaged as a board to start to look at ways to go forward, but we still couldn't do too much because we didn't have the details. All we knew was that money would be made available, but we didn't know how to spend it, what the rules for spending would be, and all the documents around submitting a plan would be. So pretty much it was, you could start, but we're not going to tell you what you're going to have to plan yet. So it wasn't particularly helpful. And then it was well into the year before those first plans started to come in terms of the government guidelines. First set of guidelines pretty much changed two things significantly, and one of them also relates to the earlier question about Ryde Town Council and IsleOfWight Council. So under the original guidelines by the Conservative government, there was no guidelines at all in terms of who supported the Secretariat and supported the Neighbourhood Board. It was really open to the board to choose who they thought would be best placed to do that. And at the time, Ryde Town Council were considered the best place to do that, as they were based in Ryde and certainly had the expertise to do so. In the new plan from the Labour government, it was very much stressed that we had to work with the IsleOfWight Council, and pretty much it was written into the rules that we had to work with the IsleOfWight Council in terms of being the partner, in terms of it was moved to working in a partnership in terms of getting things. Well, it wasn't approved as such, but effectively the IsleOfWight Council had to be part of the process, and that included using their officers in terms of the school. And that's the reason why we moved away from Ryde Council to the IsleOfWight Council, because that's what the guidelines told us we needed to do, and that's how it came about. One of the other main changes within the new guidelines was it made everything a lot wider. So when the original guidelines came out, there were four main topics. So we focused the board and the board appointments based on expertise within those four areas. When the new guidelines came out, it was made much, much wider. There was more talk on health, there's more talk on education in terms of making those key areas. So I mean, the list was very, very long. It pretty much covered most things you could think of. But there was a stress on health, and there was a stress on education being part of the areas which should be considered. As a result of that, when we brought the board back, we looked at those areas and bringing people with those particular skills onto the board, as they were areas which were stressed with the government guidelines. However, just because those areas are stressed, it really makes no difference in terms of the projects which actually get chosen, because that again all comes back to the consultation and what comes back in terms of that with Ryde. So you could have 80% of the board representing lots of different areas, but the areas which get chosen may be completely different because that's what the consultation guides us towards, in which case the boards would then be there to deliver on what that 20% or whatever it is that's chosen, regardless if they were on the board initially for a particular set of skills. Then it'll be up to those board members in the future if they didn't feel that their skill set was required or so important based on what gets chosen. But that will be down the line. We don't know where we are in terms of that. Going back again then, so the plan when it came out from the Labour government was that the new plan has to be in by the end of November. So we're now working to that date. We then also had to look at the areas within our consultation where they had gaps. And then the government also supported the consultation by employing another company, actually based in America, who did targeted consultation for all 75 towns. And they did it using a particular set of skills where they were targeting what they considered the people less likely to engage in normal consultation. So it was all done online, and they specifically targeted particular groups in particular areas which they thought, as a general rule, would be missed because they wouldn't be engaging in the same areas which would normally be targeted. So they were trying to reach the hard-to-reach groups, which was all done on and via social media. That was all paid for by central government, and that was across all the 75 towns. And we had our feedback on that, which to be honest was pretty much in line with most of the 75 towns. The themes are pretty common, and the themes across coastal towns were also pretty common, as they were when I went up and met the other chairs as well. Most of the feedback from coastal communities and the problems and challenges for coastal communities were pretty much aligned with ours. There were always some exceptions, especially where there had been big manufacturing in some of the northern coastal towns, which obviously a difference, but the trends were very similar in terms, and the challenges were very similar as ours. So going back in, the consultation was completed a couple of weeks ago in terms of focusing on the gaps. There weren't many gaps in terms of demographics from the original areas, but there were a couple, and they were focused on. And in terms of groups, it was felt that the business community didn't have a particularly strong feedback, so there was particular focus given by Spark to reaching out to the business community. And I know they worked their way up and down Union Street and the High Street to look at that as part of that exercise. They also targeted those areas in other ways to make sure that the feedback overall meets the usual standards for getting a wide and full feedback from across the community. So that work has now been completed. As of today, we have the original, initial list of potential projects for consideration came back. They're pretty broad. Also had a phone call with the civil servant in charge of the process at the end of last week, which was again in direct relation to how the plan is written. And there's a lot of flexibility at this stage in terms of the plan, so that the government aren't looking for a template which is going to be written in blood, which we can't move from. That's not the plan. That's not the idea of the plan. What they're looking for is a plan which bases itself on the feedback from the community and shows that those are the areas which are being looked at. What they're not looking for is, or if we are able to, they don't need to know the specifics. So what we can look at is broad areas. We can pick broad topics and say this is an area which is being highlighted. These are potential options A, B, C, D, E, F, G, doesn't matter, in terms of potential areas where this could be addressed. What they don't need us to say is it's this building or this street or this location or this field. What they simply want us to know is, okay, this is what people say they want. If you have something ready to go, great. If not, what's the plan? And you have 10 years. So you could say, as of now, the community want X. There's no clear site, there's no clear place at this point where we could deliver that. So we will back end that towards years 7, 8, 9. And we can work towards that and find a way to make it happen. On the other side, we could say, okay, well, actually, this was a feedback and we have a site, it's ready to go, so we can move on that quite quickly. And the plan can be a mixture of all those things. The money can get rolled over for the first 4 years. So if we don't spend it in year 1, year 2, year 3, it can get rolled over into year 4. There's then a break at year 4, where they will come up with the new specifics on what happens in terms of rollovers, overspends, underspends at that point. But effectively, there's not a rush to spend the money immediately if there's not a good way to spend the money. And I think there's a general view amongst the board that it's best to spend the money correctly and wisely rather than rushing. But in the same way, it'd be nice to get some quick wins and to show some early uses of the money. And if that's an opportunity to do that with simple, quick, easy opportunities, then they'll certainly be looked at. But in the same way, there won't be a rush to spend money for the sake of it just so we can say we've done something either. All the spends will be really considered, and it will only start once the plan's being approved by the government. The government are hoping to have some feedback by end of January, but they're not committing themselves to it. I'm just saying that's what they'd like to do. But the plan will be finished, signed off, and the money will be available with the accountable body by the 1st of April. So really, a lot of things are still very open. There's been no decisions on anything. There's been people talking about the Ryde Cricket Club's come up a few times. And again, it's one of many, many, many sites which people have talked about. For some reason, that one just caught people's attention, but it has no more relevance than any other site at this stage. It's simply places that people have talked about where there's a potential to do things in, and we're no further ahead on any site or any project than that. We have a scoring matrix put together through Spark, which we've worked on with the Finance Committee of the Town Board, Neighbourhood Board, and in fact it's going to change again, the name based on new government policy, where they've expanded it. You would have read in the paper, they've now expanded it to a lot more towns. That all comes under the new Pride in Place, which is a new government's policy. So all these towns are now, under the Pride in Place, but we're told we don't have to change our name. But when we're referred to within government, we'll be a Pride in Place town. We can call ourselves whatever we want. We can call ourselves a neighbourhood board, we can call ourselves something totally different. They don't care. But within government conversations, it's a Pride in Place, because that's a new initiative. Okay, I want to address some of the points in terms of spend. So £200,000 was made available on top of the 20 million initially for the original consultation. And then another £200,000 was made available again on top of the 20 million for consultation and the initial projects. It'd be fair to say we haven't even got close to spending anything like that money. At the moment, the finances are run through IsleOfWight Council, through the two officers within the IsleOfWight Council who are in charge of the project. And then that spending has to get signed off by the accountable body, which is the 151 officer and the 15 officers team. So the only people who can spend any money effectively is the 151 officer. Everything would have to get approved by the board, and then the board would then have to submit it through the IsleOfWight Council, will then submit it to the 151 officer in order for money to be spent. That's where we are. In terms of how much money is being spent, I don't have that number, but it's not a big amount at all. The money which isn't spent can then get rolled over and become part of the 5 million, which is the non-capital money. So if we don't spend the 400,000, that money will then roll forward and become part of the pot for the non-capital expenditure in the first few years. So as a board, we're quite keen to spend as little as we can in order to do a good job, to get the plan in and to a high standard, but also have as much money to roll forward into the other projects as we can. In terms of the specific question on consultants, our view is to use consultants as little as possible. When the skill sets don't exist within the town of Ryde, then we'll look for the IsleOfWight. When they don't exist on the IsleOfWight, we'd have to look further. But as a result, or as a general rule, our view will be to spend as much money locally as possible, as much money on the island as possible, and when that's not possible, some of the projects could be pretty unique. Skill set might not exist on the island. I don't know what that would be, but it's quite possible. That's why lots of complex construction project management sometimes has to go off island. But if it does, then it will only because an island business hasn't wanted to do it, or hasn't been able to do it, or has been well and truly beaten in a tender process. So I think that's the answer in terms of consultants. Let me just check I've answered in terms of spending. The other consultant we're using at the moment is based in Ryde. They live in Ryde, and they are advising us on the best type of charity to set up. Because what we are looking to do is set up a charity which would operate alongside, in partnership with the Neighbourhood Board, the idea of the charity was the neighbourhood board can't own anything in its own right, which doesn't allow us to create the legacy which we want to create. One of the key drivers of the board is to create legacy, and for this to have a long-term benefit for the town. So what we consider probably the best way to do that, or the best vehicle to do that, is through a charity, and that charity can then own the assets, which can then create in longevity an asset pool, which can then be to Ryde's benefit. And the example I gave in last week's meeting was, if we spent £50,000 on a toilet block and there's nobody to clean the toilet block will then close because we can't make anybody be responsible for it, and therefore that £50,000 is wasted. However, if we bought a building in the high street, converted it into houses or flats and a shop, and then charged commercial rent, we could then use that income to pay people to clean the toilet block. That's an example, but we could only do that if the charity was the body which owned the toilet block in the first place, or owned the houses. So if we could give all the money away in grants, there would be no money to spend on maintaining projects, and there would be no ability to keep that money circling and turning in the future. However, if we spend the money in a mixture of grants, mixture of capital projects, in terms of making things happen which couldn't otherwise happen, and potentially through renovation and ownership, which then gives us an income, that would be quite a good way of splitting the money to be able to do things in the long term. Because again, if you take 20 million and say we're looking to make 5% return on that, and then think, well, that could potentially be there every single year from now on forever, that's actually a lot of money to keep putting into Ryde every single year for a very, very long period of time, as opposed to giving 20 million away on projects which can't self-sustain, can't look after themselves, so then a bust 2 or 3 years later, and you have nothing to show for that 20 million other than goodwill and what could it be. So I think that's important as well. And the other thing is, it's really important the board isn't there to run anybody's pet projects just because there's a lot of noisy people want to do something. That's not what this is about. It's about representing the town and looking what's best for the greater good of the town, and making decisions which we feel, based on consultation, is for the greater good of the town. If there's a very noisy 100 people who want to do one project, it doesn't make that in the best interest of the town, and it doesn't make it representative of what the town want. It simply represents 100 noisy people. And it's going to be really important as a neighbourhood board that we're able to make those decisions based on what is considered the best for everybody. And that's what I'm very keen to do, and that's what I believe the board is very keen to do. It's not about pressure groups or lobbying, it's about consultation, ongoing consultation, constantly living or listening over a long period of time. 10 years is a long period of time. Things will change, projects will come up which aren't even dreamt of at the moment over that period of time, and they will be, might be funded, but we don't even know about them yet. So I hope that gives you a rough overview, but in summary, as of now, nothing's happened other than we've done a lot of consultation.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was very helpful. I'm on the board, but I learned quite a bit from what you just said today, up-to-date stuff. So, who would like to ask a question? Shani?
Hello, thank you very much. Wonderful presentation, thank you very much. 2 questions. The capacity of the officers that you mentioned within the Isle of Wight Town Council, how are you mitigating that they have the time and space to answer quickly and don't hold up your projects? And second question is, you mentioned health and education that has to have an effect. Is it a direct consequential effect or a ripple effect from the action? Thank you.
In terms of the capacity of the officers, there's different stages to the answer. At the moment, it's all about getting the plan out and getting that in on time. And that's stage one. I think at each stages, your question needs to be re-looked at. And I think that's an ongoing basis. It's an original, it's a 1-year plan. But after that, it will be looked at all the time based on the ever-changing guidelines. Because that came about through changes in the guidelines. But what I've noticed is guidelines tend to change quite often. And they evolve a little bit based on the feedback from the towns. There were discussions in the meetings with civil servants last week, which are completely outside the guidelines, but as the feedback from the chairs has been very similar, they're already looking at ways to make changes. So I think that's something which is going to happen throughout the programme. But a very good point, and we need to be on top of that. But as of now, short-term pragmatic approach is we have to have a plan out by November, and we need to make sure that the 2 officers on the project get that delivered. We will then constantly look at it again. And some of the skill sets could be quite specific. When we get into really detailed projects, if it's very complicated project management, then again that could be somebody within the Isle of Wight Council who's done it in other areas, or it could be third parties. But there will also be a time potentially when the charity is set up, that the charity could employ a person who does that as well. So all that can be looked at, but that will evolve. In terms of your question on health and education, in terms of health, it can be quite wide. It can be looking at the positive impacts of a project on mental health within Ryde. So if you came up with a project which was seen to be positive in terms of mental health, then that would be looked at very different to a dentist where you need to go and have your teeth pulled, which is clearly very specific and direct. Both are equally on the table and both will be looked at equally. But when we evaluate projects, all of the probably the wider aspects of health will be considered. So in terms of physical education, being active, the physical benefits of being active and mental sides of being active, all of that will go into the process, and it'll be balanced against people saying that they want those things. So if people say they want better access to mental health facilities, that can be very wide in terms of what we look at, in terms of what can deliver that. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Pippa, and then Mark. Sure.
Thanks, Steve. Great presentation. Great to have here. I think we've been asking for it for a while here, and it's just really helpful. So, like on that connection, I think as we've been developing our sort of plan for Ryde, it would be great to know how you see like that continued journeying together as we look to kind of invest in things that are going to be good for the town. I think as a council we've committed, the board as well as our council as key stakeholders to us to deliver, and so that we're complementing and we're also hearing the same things. You've got a huge amount of data that's probably really useful in terms of what's coming out from the town, so it'd be great to know how we can kind of strengthen and collaborate that. And it's great to have you here, and I hope that that's something that, not in a burdensome manner, but something that we can kind of continue. And then building on that, I guess, about the accountability, there's some very active citizens who follow quite closely who still haven't got full visibility on what's coming, and I think we learn that as councillors is just how we can, between us and you, put that visibility of what's going on so that people are excited and energised and kind of contributing rather than suspicious and concerned around that. So it'd be good to hear a little bit about that. And then just one thing that somebody reflected, I think, having attended the Ryde Society, it would be good to know more about the youth consultation and how you'd gathered that. Because there was an appetite from a young person who approached me to maybe look at getting further insight from getting some engagement at Ryde Lift in terms of from the tutor groups, or somebody who's mobilised to do something about it. So it'd be good to know if there's space for that, and if there's appetite for that, and if that's something from what's happened already around the youth engagement. Okay, thanks.
Okay, there's lots of points there. I'll try to get through them all. So in terms of communication, I think that will already improve. A lot of that's down to the speed at which we've had to go at the start. starting and stopping, starting Ryde Town Council, stopping, moving to IsleOfWight Council. I mean, it's been pretty disruptive, which is probably a large part of the reason the communication hasn't been great. We were well on our way to getting the website and all of that up and at full speed when the first brakes were put on, and then it's picking it back up with the new people. It hasn't been perfect. Hopefully that will improve. Well, I'm sure it will improve. At the moment, it's not great, and we will certainly take everybody's feedback on that on board, but it's things we're actually quite aware of ourselves. It's just getting it fixed just takes a little bit of time. In terms of visibility, the reason there hasn't been much visibility is because there's not much to show. Just consulting with people doesn't really give too much to talk about because you don't have any feedback from that consultation to get the report. So yeah, the visibility will certainly pick up, certainly improve when there's things to show, when there's things to see, and that will start soon. And the visibility in terms of the plan, I think the view would be that the plan would go into government on time, but I'm not sure there's a massive value to making that publicly available until it's approved, because if it's not approved, we just wasted everybody's time, created confusion and issues. So I think let's get the plan approved, and then that can then be well circulated, and everybody will know what the plan is, and that will give all the visibility people really probably need at that stage to see what it is. But always being aware that it can change at any time, all the time. As things change or new ideas come up, it can be, it's not set in stone by any means. It simply will show the initial timelines and the projects which are better able to start than others. That will pretty much be the large part of what it shows. And it will show the indication of where the consultation is directing the wishes of Ryde for us to focus and filling in those gaps. In terms of accountability, so there's 3 Ryde Town Councillors on the Neighbourhood Board, Andy the local MP and the Police and Crime Commissioner. So there's a lot of accountability in terms of elected officials. The board, I strongly hope, will hold itself to account as it goes, and will hold each other to account. And from the people on the board, I very much think that will happen. No reason to think it wouldn't. In terms of youth consultation, that's been mixed. Some parts were really positive, some parts were challenging. We've looked at it in different ways, engaging specifically on a one-to-one basis through the consultation process is one of the areas we looked at. The schools were contacted directly and encouraged to participate. Ryde School did an exceptional job in terms of getting feedback. Very, very high percentage of the secondary school completed that. And that was largely done by the school giving the children time in within their lessons, within their tutor time to do it, and encouraged and requested to do it. The same was asked of the other schools, but not the other schools, or not the other schools responded in the same way. But everybody was given the same brief, the same opportunity. So that was mixed in terms of feedback. But then we did address the gaps by going out to particular groups and trying to engage with those groups one-to-one in the most efficient, effective way as possible. In terms of youth engagement, that again is ongoing, and we certainly welcome as much engagement as possible, and we'll be looking for as much engagement as possible. And also for the people who, within the youth boards who do engage with us, also to represent as many of their demographic as possible. Again, being a voice for a wider demographic rather than just particular interests. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Can I just say that it's nice to see some young people in our audience today. Please do come to future meetings. But I think there was a point that came up at the right society meeting.
two small, short questions. The guidelines which the government have now given you, is there anything in there which excludes things you can't do, or in that? And the second question is about where is Ryde? Where is the boundaries of Ryde? Is it somebody mentioned it in the public? But is it flexible and continues to be, or is it fixed?
Okay, yeah, two very good questions. Let's start with the boundary. So the boundary had to be submitted and approved by the government, which it's done. It can always be looked at again. So our goal as a neighbourhood board was to make the boundary as wide as we can make it, to give us as many opportunities to say yes and no to projects as possible. So it is wide, it's deliberately wide, but that's the reason. We'd rather have a big area available and use a very small area, as opposed to not having a big area available and projects coming up wide and not being able to do them because they're outside the boundary. Yeah, that's the only space available. And so it does go out into Binstead, Blackpool, and on the way to grading. But it doesn't mean we have to use it, and it's nice to have the opportunity to use it if that's the only opportunity which presents itself. If better things present itself, great. But yeah, it's no more than that. And that was the rationale behind it, was simply to create as many opportunities to look at and not close doors. In terms of what gets excluded, what was the question again? Sorry,
From the guidelines, the government guidelines, does it exclude any infrastructure?
Yeah, so in terms of that, basically anything which we put forward which is clearly within the guidelines will be looked at lightly by the government, and they will look at every way to put it through without too much supporting documentation. If it's outside the guidelines, then they will look at it in a lot more detail, and we have to give a lot more detail. But it doesn't mean you can't do it. They prefer things not to be outside, but if what you give them is outside, then you have to go to a lot more work, provide a lot more detail, and then they will look at it. So it's actually nothing is excluded at all in terms of being impossible. But if it's not within the guidelines, it will be more difficult.
Michael.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for presenting. One of the things that I engendered today is we went to the IsleOfWight poverty strategy, poverty reduction strategy. In fact, Diana was there as well. And the reality is that 5 of the wards of Ryde are the poorest. Possibly you've got Pan Estate that sort of comes in there, but most of the actual most poorest wards, and in fact Ryde South is clearly the poorest. That's where the highest number of social housing. I'm concerned how the engagement of those people who actually are just surviving, let alone thinking of what they can do to empower themselves. How, especially when you talk about projects being decided by October and things, we need some effective community development of encouraging and empowering those families, right? Which are quite generational, right, in the sense of their poverty, is how do we get them involved and make sure that there is a strain of funding to enable them to build for the sort of future. And I think one of the things is the first town board, right, when there was a town board, years and years and years ago, built those areas, built Oakfield, built Oak Vale, right? actually suddenly they left, and you've got no community centres there. You had residents associations that were funded by the funding at that time. That all ended, and you have left nearly 2 or 3 generations sort of behind. How do we make sure that this Ryde Neighbourhood Board actually gives those people, those families, those children, those next generation a future?
Yeah, funding voice is a really important part out of what you just said, and I think one of the things I'm really aware of, or from the beginning, is how do we avoid funding voids? And to me, that can only happen if you create legacy and you create assets which generate income. Otherwise, funding voids is a classic hole to fall into. You build it, and then money dries up, and then you have a funding void. So I think that's a really important consideration, and it's the reason behind wanting to set up the charity in order to own assets to address that. In terms of the big, wide problems of the deprived areas, again, there's lots of ways we would hope to address that in some way. Sporting opportunities has come up a lot. That's one area which can impact everybody from all demographics. Making opportunities for people within that is one way, or one thing which has come up within discussions. Public realm space, communities, assets, community centres. They're the sort of areas which are being talked about. But until we've looked at all the projects and all things in, I can't really say anything specifically which has been put on the table, but they're the sort of general areas. And certainly helping all these communities is top of mind. Hopefully plans or ideas will be put forward which help do that. But in terms of the funding void, I agree, and that's why we're taking the approach on funding voids.
Okay, I think thank you for that. I think my concern is that when I was talking to your consultants and things, I felt that there was a whole lot of people whose voice is not necessarily getting heard. And I think, if I can recommend anything, is that we build in some good old-fashioned community development and have people working in those communities, so that as the project grows, you then got more voices, more engagement and more involvement, because it takes time, especially when you've had nothing, to actually get the aspiration to actually ask for help. It's one area I know because I worked in those communities most of my working life. It takes time for people to feel comfortable to actually say, actually, this is what I need. Right?
Yeah.
Of that.
I mean, there's no silver bullet. I mean, and the problems in Ryde are the reason why Ryde got the money in the first place. If we didn't have 5 areas of deprivation, we wouldn't have got the money. But when you look at the amount of towns that are now given 20 million to, it shows on the national scale how big the problem is, of which, we're just one part of it. Yeah, I mean, no promises other than to listen and engage and take on all valuable feedback like that. We will do our best to deal with a very complicated and difficult challenge.
Let's make a comment. So, Steve, I'll ask it in the form of a question, which is what's better. Following on from Pippa's comment about how Ryde Town Council definitely are waiting to plan in conjunction with the Neighbourhood Board and the IsleOfWight Council, and the need to work together, would you agree that the point Michael has raised about those specific wards is a perfect opportunity to work with Ryde Town councillors and those ward councillors specifically to get into those wards, and that would be a brilliant way to start that partnership working, because three organisations in town all working for the betterment of town. Makes no sense to work. Would you agree? It makes no sense to work in isolation.
I would. I mean, yeah, it does. And, you know, improving those lines of communication and engagement is key and very important. And then, again, I stress, this is a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
This is just a start. The consultation will run constantly. It won't, I mean, the official thing's been shut off for now because we had to get the plan in. After the plan's in, it will open back up, and we'll always be listening and looking at ideas and can, yeah, it's 10 years. it's a lot of time to make these changes, but that will requires ongoing consultation and that ongoing working with the community, and that's what we'll be looking to do.
I think we should possibly draw it to a close. One quick question, Jen.
Thank you for your presentation. Given your ties, or previous ties to the cricket club, do you think that it was appropriate that you proposed a boundary change during your meeting? And also my concern is around impartiality, because there are several members of the Ryde Neighbourhood Board that are linked to either sports centres, facilities, or roles as directors, secretaries, etc., or have links to the land that the boundary has now been increased to. And just to point out, Ryde Cricket Club is 3 miles away from the centre, and I think we could all agree we could probably spend that money 3 times over in the centre here alone, let alone, you know, increasing the boundary to Ryde Cricket Club 3 miles away. I just don't understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a member of Ryde Cricket Club.
You were director until the 6th of March 2023.
No, I wasn't. I was on the Ryde. I was on the IsleOfWight Cricket Board.
Okay, it's Company's House, that's what you're listed as.
IsleOfWight Cricket Board.
Okay, that's still a tie to the area that you proposed in a previous meeting to expand.
Jen, I think this is not the place to get involved in this,
Okay, so
this sort of.
But I had no link to Ryde Cricket Club. I have a link to cricket. Yeah.
But also, as Steve said, no decisions have
No,
been made.
and in terms of the location, there's a lot of feedback in terms of wanting a sports expansion of sports facilities, cricket, hockey.
Outside of Ryde, where the forest wards can't access.
Jen, I'm going to draw this to a close, okay, part of a little short time, but also because you said no decisions have been made, and there is generally, as you say, there's a shortage of sports facilities, but no decisions have been made as to where there are a lot of other locations.
I'll address it because it's clearly a big issue. When you're looking at pitches, there's only so many spaces you can put pitches. So if you're looking at trying to create a sports location where you can have rugby, football, cricket, hockey, tennis, all of those sports together, there's not many locations available. So what we're looking to do is make as many sites where that could happen and putting them out to discuss. Holbrook is one and has challenges, so that's on the table as one. There are no others, therefore we're looking at different options. You have green fields where there's no planning, such as Nicholson Road, Penny Feathers, and areas like that, but they're a long way away. And if you look at the town or the map, there is no other green spaces. So if the desire from the people of Ryde is to have those facilities, if they want a sports community which has all those sports brought together, the options are very limited. So if that's what the people of Ryde want, we have to find a way, if we can, to come about how do you do that? How do you get all those sports in one location and having one centre which you can then put in the logistics? So if you have one centre for all those sports, you could potentially have a fleet of minibuses which transport people in and out. You could improve the infrastructure. You could do all that if everything's together. So no decisions have been made, but we're looking at options. If that's the feedback people are giving, how do you then deliver on that feedback? So therefore there are very limited options. and you certainly can't build them in the middle of a built-up area, so you have to have area.
We were awarded it based on deprivation. Cricket, the deprived man's sport. I'm
It's got nothing. Sorry, don't let it. It's nothing about. It's not about cricket. The idea is the land around the cricket pitch. It had nothing to do with the cricket club. The whole discussion.
It states in the meeting that it's then going to support the cricket club.
No.
But it states it in the minutes.
Steve, apart from anything else, we've only got an hour left to run this.
But they've clearly got the wrong. It's running Diana's and it's wrong. So I think this needs to be addressed. So the idea, or what the discussions were around, is acquiring all the areas surrounding the cricket club in order to be able to create a facility where you have all the facilities brought together, which is football, rugby, hockey, cricket, and wider. The idea is you had the cricket club is simply the starting point. It already has a sports facility. It already has a home in terms of a bar and a clubhouse. So the idea was if you could expand that entire area and create a hub for all those sports, you would then have the economies of scale to back into that with the logistics and make it a one-stop for the whole community. The other areas you could look at was Holbrook, and there is no other areas available at this time, unless you start from scratch. If you're starting from scratch, if you took somewhere like Milkson Road, which is on a big hill, you'd have to level it up. Once you leveled it up, you'd have to put in all the infrastructure. You'd have to build the clubhouse, which already exists at Smallbrook, and it already exists at Ryde Cricket Club. You'd then have to build all the other facilities, so therefore it would cost a lot more. So therefore it was mooted as one of the many projects to look at where you could potentially build the sports facilities and get all the 5 major sports into one location.
The facility would support Ryde Cricket Club, currently facing financial and membership challenges. It's limited in
It would support the cricket club in terms of they have the clubhouse, so therefore it would be a clubhouse for all of them, and they would then come up with whole brand new agreements, which would then have each of the different clubs which would build up around it.
I just want transparency, that's all.
I hope I've been transparent in answering that for you. If not, tell me.
This is not a meeting of the Ryde Neighbourhood Board of Ryde.
Thank you, Steve, very much for coming. Appreciate it. And hopefully, as Alan pointed out, we need to work closely together with you. And hopefully you'll come and give us some updates periodically. In the meantime, the 3 councillors, right-hand councillors, and one of them who are on the board, will able to report back as best we can. So thank you very much indeed. And for those who feel that I might have to tell the thing, I am very aware that our meetings are supposed to last 2 hours, maximum 2 hours, and we've got some very important decisions still to be made on the agenda. So thanks a lot. Okay. Right. We can go back to the agenda now. The next item is the minutes. I hope everybody's looked at the minutes. Would anybody got any concerns about them, or can somebody propose? Yes? Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. Can we just have a show of hands and everybody's happy with them? That's lovely. Thank you. We now go on to item 6, which is officers' reports. We've got a verbal report from Joe from Network Ryde. Thank you for being patient with us and kind of coming. Yeah.
Where would you like me?
I need to have a stand.
Give her a chair. Give her a chair.
She's got a chair.
I'll just take
Do you want to sit or stand? Whatever. And then.
Slightly warm.
Oh, thank you. Well, anyway, thank you for letting me speak. Got just a few little nice, hopefully nice positive things to tell you. If you don't know me, my name is Jo, and I am the Deputy Manager at Network Ryde Youth Service. And normally Bex would be here, who is the manager, but I'm sending her apologies because actually she's doing something really important. She is at the Lord Lieutenant's award ceremony, and where 2 of our young people that have just completed their Gold Duke Federer Award are receiving an award this evening. So
That's really good.
So that's absolutely fantastic. So you've all received the steering group notes. You all have those minutes, don't you? So that was sent out earlier, but there's a few other things that have been going on in September for us, which I'll just go through. I've got a list because I can't remember. I know Steve was talking a lot, just from his head, and quite frankly I can't do that, so I'm just going to read through this. So we've been open since probably, for the new term, we also had summer activities, and we've been open now since probably about the 5th of September. Within that time, we have had 104 individual young people accessing our youth service, which is fantastic. It's a really good number. And throughout, with those 104 people, they have attended 309 times. 39 of those are new Year 7s, and 28 of those are home educated young people. So that's our kind of figures at the moment. We're obviously running, I'm sure most of you probably know what we do, and we run a general offer and a general timetable, but other than that we do other little projects as well. So we've got we've got some consultation work going on at the moment. Bex and I are doing some work with Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council to run a youth consultation to look at youth provision in that area. They've obviously seen how successful Network Ryde is, and they've asked us to go and just and support them. We'll be doing some meetings with youth providers in the Newport Carisbrooke area. We're also running a survey with young people, so that'll be with kind of Year 6s and all of the high schools there as well. That's in the pipeline for October half term. We're running a library project with Ryde Library at the moment. Young people are just up there right now, and they are redesigning the teen area of the library, so that's a really nice project. Obviously we run a Duke of Edinburgh Award. Like I said, the Golds have just got their award, but over the summer we've been, as much as we have our centre just down the road, we are always out on expeditions. That's what we do. So in the past year we have had 31 young people complete their expeditions, and we'll be hosting our annual award ceremony in sort of end of November. So if any councillors, you check your emails, an invite will be coming soon. Please come along to that. Other things, I'll just quickly go through. We've applied for a small pot of money, sort of additional money, via the Youth Justice Service. That's £3,000 that we're being awarded, and that is to work with 10 young people, and it's around healthy relationships, online safety and misogyny, and that is very much sort of early intervention work. So amongst the team we'll be putting to sort of tailoring a kind of programme of work with young people, and that will be divided up within the teams and have a small caseload each, which would be really important work, I think. Other stuff, we're working alongside Cameron Baxter from Community Safety Partnership, and we hope to be delivering some more outreach work in the town in the future. That's something we did a couple of years ago, which was very successful. So that is not confirmed yet, but we will be doing it soon, hopefully. October half-term activities currently being programmed and planned. We'll be doing a musical theatre workshop, roller skating, murder mystery, loads of stuff. General partnership working is going well as usual. We're running a silent disco alongside the Youth for Christ people who came to us and wanted to borrow our silent disco headset. So we said to them, why don't you just come and use our centre and we'll collaborate, which is really nice. What else? Somebody at the door. I'll leave it finished. Rudely interrupted by Councillor Dorr. And lastly, I've just got a couple of nice things, which is just some feedback. I've got a feedback from other agency, which is Young Carers. They've been using our centre, and also Youth Justice has been using our cooking facilities and our fantastic kitchen. And this is just a quote from Young Carers, which they emailed to us, which just says, we would like to say a huge thank you to everyone involved at Network Ryde for allowing us to use their fantastic facilities. The Young Carers really enjoyed being able to use the kitchen and do cooking together. It gave them the chance to learn new skills, have fun and build confidence in a supportive environment, giving them a well-deserved break from their responsibilities. And also a little just a little bit of feedback from a young person that I spoke to recently. Just says it's just what Network Ryde means to them. So Network Ryde means to me safety, friendship and growth. I've made new friends and built my confidence since coming to Network Ryde. That's all I have to say. If you want to know anything else, please.
Thank you very much, Joe. That's very encouraging. Because we'll be talking about Network Ryde a bit later on. So we've also received that we have a written report from the Community Development Officer. Can we note that we've received that as well? Thank you. Yes. There's a report by me, which I won't add anything more to, but I hope everybody's had a look at it. Thank you. Right, we now go on to members. Sorry, Pip.
Sorry, I just wanted to check in on the corporate plan that was in your...
Yeah.
I just wanted to check.
What's happening?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in terms of the status. I guess after we had the last meeting, there were just two things that I wasn't clear from what was in the report. First of all, are we still calling it a corporate plan? Because I think there was quite a lot of feedback in the room about coming up with something new. And secondly, we also talked about at least creating space for people in wards that do want to consult, to have some space for consultation, because what I took from the report was that we were going to get something in November in order for approval, but I think whilst I appreciate not everybody felt that they would get traction in terms of consultation, I think it would be nice to know if there is a capacity for those that do want to consult in their wards on the corporate plan. Thanks.
What I'm going to say, if Lisa might want to add something, that there will be a message coming out to all councillors very shortly about this, including another draft. It's had endless different names. I think the current favourite is Action Plan. But I'd rather not get into the details of, otherwise we'll be here all night. So the intention is that it come to the November meeting for final, but there'll be consultation with councillors before. Thank you. Members' report. Has anybody attended a meeting on behalf of the IsleOfWight Council? on behalf of Ryde Town Council that they want to make a report on.
It's just to say that Councillor Luciani and myself attended the open day at Greenmount School. We went there with the intention of bullying people to fill in our questionnaire to try and get the Sherborne Centre into everybody's mind. Councillor Luciani had a brilliant idea of bringing over the face painting lady. She did a job on Karen, who enticed people in, and she was then able to get people to fill the questionnaire, threatening them that they couldn't have their child go to the face painter fill the questionnaire. So we managed to get some questionnaires completed. It was a very nice little activity actually, and we did meet a lot of people in the West Ryde ward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lou. Right, so now on to members' questions.
I mean, I just want to say I had a meeting with an organisation called Green Gyms, which is a volunteer organisation that operates across the island. They approached me and I've met with them twice. They're quite an interesting organisation where it's sort of tying volunteer work around gyms with also mental health. And they were particularly interested in a couple of the projects in Ryde, and they had some great ideas both around the canoe lake and also around the rose garden. So I'm going to connecting with Alison. I've already flagged it with her as a potential area, but I think it's great just to be reaching into those further networks, and particularly some of the areas which I know have been bugbears before. They had some really great ideas around.
Thank you for that. Right, any members' questions? Bearing in mind time is short, but I don't want to stop people asking any questions. Any questions? No? Right, that's lovely, so we can go on. The next item, item 10, is relates to the Finance and Community Resources Committee. We've got two sub-items there. One is to note the approved minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of July. I think people are aware that we don't note the minutes here until they've already been approved by the committee. So the last ones that have been approved are those for the 22nd of July. Anybody, can we note those? Thank you. Now we have to agree to a recommendation from the committee that was made at the last meeting, which is to agree to the recommendation from the committee with regarding the conclusion of the external audit. Phil, do you want to say a word about this or not?
No, not particularly, Chair, except that it's a continuing issue we've had from the external auditor, usually around our level of reserves, and it is something that we are considering the recommendation of the external auditor to return the level of reserves to 3 months operational amounts. It's about 330,000, 320,000. We're up at about 280. So we're about 50,000 short. My suggestion, Chair, is that we should do this through the Finance Committee. And we did at one stage have a Reserves Policy Committee that looked at how we should get the reserves to a level that the external auditor was comfortable with. And I would suggest that we look again at a process over a short number of years, probably 3 years, with a plan to return it to the level as suggested by the auditor. So probably around 50 or 60,000 over a period of 2 or 3 years at least anyway.
Thank you. Any comments or questions regarding this? If not, we need someone to propose that we agree to it. Is that right?
I'll propose that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we have a show of hands in support of that? Thank you very much.
I've got a little update as well, just about the website.
Yeah.
The tendering process of the website has gone on now, and we will be awarding a contract probably in the next few days. So that is underway. So the first one of the points is already being addressed.
Thank you very much. Community Planning Committee, we just have to note the approved minutes. Thank you. And we always have to put on the agenda, because we're one member short of the committee, we have to put on the agenda the possibility just to check that anybody would like to join the committee. No more volunteers, I think.
Come on.
We managed to. You're on. Okay. Community Development Steering Committee, to note the minutes of the steering group, not steering committee, held on the 5th of June. Thank you. We have had a meeting since then, at which we approved that. And similarly, with the Network Ryde steering group, to approve the notes of the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of June. Thank you. Right. The next item on the agenda is just to get a sense of people's views about the possibility of recording the full council meetings in some way or another. I think all we're asking for at the moment, Lisa, is to find out whether people feel it would be worth exploring this. We have had some requests from members of the public, and I think some councillors have supported it. So we're not looking for a detailed discussion as to how we would do it or what, but the idea is, I mean, with the Isle-of-Wight council meetings, if you want to, you can either listen to them live or you can go and watch them later. We wouldn't necessarily be doing it the same way as that, but it's a question of whether we want to explore the options and so on. So, any views on it?
I'd be possibly have it so that people could view from home, because in particular, it's not just about my ward, of course, but there are a lot of people that would like to be at the meetings that can't due to childcare, etc. So it'd be good to make it a little bit more accessible to the people of Ryde, really. So I'm for it.
Yeah, absolutely. As Jen said, anything that opens up local politics to the access to local politics to people is going to be can only be beneficial for the people of Ryde, can't it? So yeah, I'd be 100% behind it, whatever way we work out that we can do it.
I kind of know which way this is pointing, by the way, because I'm on the camera. No, again, I mean, in the 21st century, there's no excuse not to, frankly. You know, it's feasible. We have Teams, we have Zoom, we have all the software out there. I have a professional style camera, which I know can plug into a laptop and simply stream it to the world. It's as simple as that. You don't need my level of kit. If the council were to, find a way of doing it, a cheaper way of doing it, I'm not suggesting I would charge, obviously, but again, when it comes to accessibility,
This is it.
really no issue. Absolutely, you should be charging for this, absolutely.
I do it for love.
I don't.
Anybody against the idea of looking into this more? No? Okay.
I'll come back with a report and some proposed policies then.
For the next meeting?
Yeah.
Lovely. Right, this is where we're not going to exclude the public, even though it says so. We've got two items here. The first one is on options for the future of Vectis Hall. Is it okay, Lisa, if I just give because members of the public won't have seen this report, and in case some councillors are not fully up to date, what I thought I'd do is just give a very brief update or brief summary of what's in the report and highlight the options, and then we've got three options to look at. I mean, the basic background is we've owned Vectis Hall for quite a long time with a view to doing something with it for the community. We struggled. We applied for various sources of funding and not been successful, unlike St Thomas's Church, which we've been very successful and turned into the Network Ryde premises. More recently, we have explored the option. We've constantly, because it's a listed, greatly listed building, we've had the watchful eye of the conservation officer, the council officer on us, and so we've had to spend quite a lot of money stopping it from getting worse. Though it has got worse, but we have stopped it from getting as bad as it could be. We've also looked in very recently. We've made a pre-planning application to look at the possibility of actually demolishing all or most of it with a view to possibly building something like sheltered housing or using it for some purpose like that. The indications that we've got so far from the planning officers are that would be a very long process, because you have to do a vast amount of stuff to justify demolition or nearly complete demolition. So we'd probably be a year before we were able to meet the planning requirements or something like that. In the meantime, it's continuing to cost us money to stop it getting worse. So we're looking at three options that we've been put forward. We do one option would be just to put it up for sale on the open market. The second option would be to offer it to put out tender with a restricted use for community groups. We do know we have been approached by some community groups that might be interested, and that would would be subject to, there is an appendix to the report which would set out the terms of the tender that would go out with certain protections to avoid it not just being, squandered away, to ensure that we had able to monitor what it was being used for and so on. The third option would be to hang on to it and pursue the idea of submitting a planning application or look at other options. So they're basically the three options. Do you want to add anything, Lisa?
Yes, we actually have an appointment tomorrow regarding the pre-app. Although we know it's unlikely, we have already paid the consultant for this process, so we can run the two processes simultaneously. We don't have to stop both. So I think we should see through the pre-app at the moment as we're going, as we've committed. But going for option B allows us to put it out to tender and then have a number of options to consider. We do think it is unlikely that we will get permission to demolish, but we probably need to know that for certain, or at least to get a clear indication that that's the case. And we have had a number of groups contacting us interested in the building, so we can run those two processes simultaneously.
Do you still want a vote on the third?
Yes.
Or a vote, at least of approval to put it out to tender community groups? That's really what we need,
yes.
So we can get on with that.
So we can get on with the work.
And of course all this is set in the context of what we've just agreed is the report of the external auditor. And Pippa.
Thanks. I just want to check in terms of the annex that you talked about. I don't know if we received that in terms of the clauses. Would that be some sort of covenant? Because I guess, from what I understand, there's been quite a lot of reputational risk for the council around this property, and I guess I would be concerned about, I think it would be good if it's moved into something which is, beneficial for the community, as long as it's then not kind of spun around by somebody else and then you renovate it. So I just want to mitigate those kind of risks. Is that what those details would go into? And I guess before we made this decision, that'd be helpful to just kind of know exactly what those kind of stuff were.
It's an appendix to the report, which I must confess I had to show where it was.
There were hyperlinks in the report. The invitation to tender is more about the grounds on how people tender. They need to put a business case to us. At the moment, we're in the process of trying to transcribe the handwritten lease, which is great. We will put some caveats into any legal agreement going forward, and that would have to be agreed by councillors, but about how they could dispose of the building, and we would remain the freeholder as well. So we would need to give permission if it was sold. Those sorts of caveats would be added in, but that would be done with the help of a solicitor. But the invitation to tender is more about the process and making sure it's fair and transparent and everyone gets an equal chance to put their bids forward.
Any other questions, comments? Michael?
I think for me is, the building of Vector's Hall, which was very much, going back time, it was very much a community. Coming forward for us as a council to do something about the building, because it was a community asset, and it was a community centre. It's also very important to our heritage, being it was the first sort of free school. And I think that we've got to keep that in mind, that any use of it is actually for the benefit of the community. Now, it could be, if it had to be, the site pulled down and it was social housing or something, but whatever happens with the site, we bought that in faith for the benefit of the community. And I think that principle has to stay.
Alex?
As somebody with a bit of a background in heritage and was a sort of historian, I think the reputational damage of even considering taking it down, I would basically walk now. I think I wouldn't want to be here if that decision was made now. I'm aware that it's been a bit of a shambles for donkey's years. I can barely remember it being a community centre myself, and I've been in this town for 51 odd years. So I would very, very strongly object to anything that led us down the path of losing it. However, I do understand that the amounts that are being spoken about across two separate issues are not a million miles apart, that's all I'll say. And it needs to be in other hands. We're not in the business of micromanaging heritage assets. We're not the right people to do it. There's not an architect in the council. I've got a bit of Onton history, but that doesn't make me a historian. Do you know what I mean? So the expertise doesn't exist in this room. It does exist in other places. On the flip side of that, it would be willful vandalism. As I believe it's one of the first free schools in England, was that the original? Yeah. And as such, it is a piece of important historical, or has an important historical value, and it would be just a cultural vandalism to let it just go wither on the vine. Although it's withering on the vine already. It's very much withered, as Lou just said. But that's my position.
Thank you. Anybody? Johnny.
So I have read the appendices, and I just want to, based upon what we're learning from the Ryde Town Board presentation earlier, and the fact that we've agreed to increase our budget capacity for the extra 3 months, I liked the fact on one of the appendices it gave a clear date for the tender. I think that was really good, and I feel that we need to have a very clear dates and stick to the guidance so that we don't fall into the same trap of being like the government has to the Ryde Town Board. We need to give very clear deadlines of when we expect things to happen. Thank you.
I'd speak, I'm speaking in place of Charles, who wanted his point put forward. He's very much in favour of Plan B, and also just is mindful, as already mentioned, about the covenants that get put on the building. He feels pretty much the same as everybody, but I just wanted to be able to say to him, if he asked me, yes, I did put your point forward, Charles.
No more views. Would anybody like to put forward
Yeah, Chair, just very briefly. I think for me, I prefer a bit more of a fleshed out proposal than what is essentially 5 or 6 pages, maybe 7 or 8 there. There's just not enough meat on the bones for this. This is a huge financial consideration, but also it will affect the heritage of Ryde too. I've asked for it, I haven't seen any of the pre-application information yet from the planning office, and I want to go through that. I want to ensure from a reputational damage point of view, both from heritage and a financial position for Ryde Town Council. Ultimately, we answer to you, the electorate, and there should be a degree of input from that. There are various options on the table, but there's nothing specific about the safeguards, and I kind of feel, although it is a land anchor in many respects, and we shouldn't spend any money on it, I'm not quite sure exactly where we need to be when we're throwing the words around a disposal at the moment. So I can't support this tonight, I'm afraid, based on that.
My comments just around the co-concurrent, you've said you've got the pre-planning app running concurrently with the options obviously A, B and C, and we're favouring or we're leaning towards option B, but we're still in the pre-planning and we've paid for that. So I'm just a bit confused as to why we've got both of them running at the same time. So just wanting some clarity.
Honestly, Tara would want a decision on the building as quickly as possible, and if we wait for one stage to run out and then start another, the time scales go on into the next financial year. The pre-S hasn't gone in yet, that's why we haven't got the paperwork. We've had some preliminary meetings with well, some of the work, obviously there's viability studies, so some of that work's been paid for. We've got a meeting with the chap tomorrow just to see Because at one point there was a talk of us partnering with a housing association, which may have made the plans viable. Our understanding at the moment is that the housing association isn't interested, and then for some reason last week that's reared its head again. So we really need to make sure whether they are or they aren't, because that's really relevant. This isn't a decision to dispose of the building. That will come back to full council. This is a decision to start the process of going out to tender to invite people to bid. So we have then got a basis to make a decision when we do dispose of the building.
Martin.
I'll just very quickly say that I think this decision which we make tonight has been delayed about a couple of years. We have dithered a bit, and I think it's crunch time.
Chair, I know we shouldn't jump back in, get a second bite of the cherry, but am I to understand from what you just said, Lisa, that the pre-app actually hasn't gone in, and yet we're basing...
Pre-app has gone in.
That, no, you just said that the pre-app hasn't gone in, so we don't have a clear indication from planning, so at this stage it would be irresponsible to decide on any of the options until that comes back. Well, I missed something.
We've had meetings with planning officers who have told us that to dispose of the building, to demolish the building, we have to go through a lengthy process, which, for example, we have to have it on sale on the open market for a minimum of 6 months before we can even start the application to
No, I
demolish the
understand that,
building.
but just to clarify, we haven't had the results of the pre-application back yet.
No.
Thank you.
We've had the conversations with the planning officers, not the information we haven't got. That's why I'm suggesting we can still carry on with that process at the same time, so we get that information back.
Can I just, so am I right that what you're really asking or recommending to us is that we agree to put it out to tender to community groups? It's not a question really now of 3 options, but we're asking for approval for a decision on that, so that we can keep all options open until you've heard the results.
We need to make an official decision to dispose of the building, and that will have to be done in full council, and we will need to have all of that because it's disposal of assets. We need to, and we'll need some legal advice on that as well. This is really to start this invitation to tender process, so we can run them.
Do you want that for a phase or just agree?
I'd like that. Shall we first?
Right, so just with it is now on the onset of winter, one of the risk factors for this building from just common sense, but also reading the paperwork, is water. And if we do hold and we wait and we try and get more information and we try and wait for an official bit of paperwork from the council that's over capacity, that should be spending their time on the Ryde Town Board decision for November to get that through, then there could be a lot more damage to this asset for the community group that may want to buy it. Take ownership of it.
I was going to say, can I propose that we go for option B, which is to dispose of the building by offering the building to a local charity, heritage, etc. That we begin to go through that process, which doesn't commit us to anything definitely, but at least gets us started.
Michael?
I'm in agreement with that, but I just think we've got to be realistic. I get worried when suddenly, you're mentioning Tara wants us to get rid of it. I'm sorry, it's the sort of the tail wagging the dog here. We should be very clearly the people who are elected to actually decide what happens. And I think just a realistic time, by the time you've put out a tender, we're already in October. The financial year is, you're not going to get a community group who's going to have to put in a huge amount of work to put a presentation, to put things forward. That's not all going to come back until probably May next year. So I just think we need to be very realistic. I support it, but we need to be very realistic about how long these things take. and put those in place. We should know that because it's quite a long time for the for St Thomas's Church and side. So we need to be a bit realistic, and I don't think we should have members of staff saying, you know, dispose of it. I really feel that that is not the way that we should be. It should be said at this meeting.
I think that was right. Just there is concern from our financial officer about the financial implications. Are we ready to take a vote, or does anybody want to say anything more? We've had it proposed and seconded. That we are, and the motion we're looking at is that we go ahead to issue the tender to community groups with a view of seeing what that options that presents us with, without committing ourselves to anything.
Change the wording of that.
Yes. Can we take a vote? Who's in favour? Anybody against? Anybody? Any abstentions?
All in favour, we'll come back to council. We did originally hope that we would have the free action information going out. It just seems to have taken a lot of it getting planning officers over the summer into the building, which we've tried quite a few times. So it should be with us shortly.
Thank you very much. Right, we have one last item. We have a motion about Network Ryde from Michael. Would you like to introduce your motion?
Yes, I mean, I did send out this motion to everyone, every councillor, before I put it in. The reason why I've come this forward, because I felt from various meetings we had about the corporate plan in the future that we needed to take a step back and actually look at why we created Network Ryde. We created it because the IsleOfWight Council closed down youth services. And this council took a very brave step to actually create not only a youth service, but a bespoke professional youth service, because there was a clear feeling that the future of the town was its young people, and that we needed to invest in our young people. And I feel that, I mean, one of the things that we did from that is we then decided that we needed to have a building that was big enough for that, and we, this council, not through IsleOfWight Council, this council actually bid itself to that fund, or the Youth Investment Fund. In fact, it was probably the first project that was ever, right across the country, that was actually approved. And we did that because we knew we had the infrastructure and to actually do it, even though IsleOfWight Council at this time said, no, we want to put in an IsleOfWight bid, where actually we would have failed. We put in that bid, and part of that bid was to have the funding to increase our staff to be able to manage that. And I was mayor at the time, and I was asked very specifically what is going to happen when that extra revenue funding goes. We were talking, we had about £1 million, I think, with revenue and building and so on. It was probably just under £1 million for that. And it was very clearly said that it would be the precept, it would be the actual funding from the town. And we did consultations in budgets, and it was always very clear that this town wanted Network Ryde, wanted the youth service. So I felt it's really, really important that we discuss that as a council, and actually discuss it before we finalise a corporate plan, because for me, I came on this council very much to support the next generation. I'm 68, but I want to actually see the next generation really to develop and grow. And we have some real serious problems on the island. We have young people who actually leave and don't come back. We have the highest number per capita of population of young offenders. We have the highest number of capacity of population of young people going into mental health services. We have the highest number of children with special needs, right? But what we do know, and I'm vice chair of the Children's Committee on that, we do know that if you have a very effective youth service in a town, you reduce those numbers. It's known, it's a clear evidence of that. So for me, we should be developing and expanding our youth services. And we should be giving the support, our professional team, our business development manager and that, should be giving the support to the award-winning professional team that we actually have, right? To be able to get on their job to actually bring in the young people and to do it. And there shouldn't be anything, because I was at a meeting where it was clearly said, oh, that service has got to find an extra 70,000 or whatever. No. We go forward, if we have to look at other savings, I would want those other savings, or we actually put up, Councillor Jordan's very good about this, 10p or whatever, or 30p or whatever on our precept when we come to actually set the precept, because we need that service. We also need to actually open discussions with the Ryde Neighbourhood Board, because they should be putting and investing that money into young people. There's public health, there's the NHS, and we should be actually, to make sure, and I use the words, Ryde Town Council's jewel in the crown within that. And I see that, we need that full commitment. So I'll end this, and I put it in my email to all of you. I once, when I was mayor, was sitting in Ryde Esplanade Hotel, and a young woman came up to me and said, "Oh, are you the mayor?" Right? And I went, "Well, yes, I am." And she said, "I want to thank you." She said, "I've been a single mum and I've been struggling. My only job and income is this hotel. Right? And 2 of my children, right, come to Network Ryde. And that has helped me keep my job and has helped them to build a future." Right? So I put forward my motion, I look for a seconder, and I hope that we today can actually fully support Network Ryde and this service. Thank you.
Can I just say, I think you're pushing an open door. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I had a tour around by Bex a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't believe that derelict church, when I was a child, was such an incredible and enchanting space. And I thoroughly agree with you, Michael. Good work.
I think just listening to the stuff we heard from the Ryde Town Board and the whole thing around legacy, I think it is, you know, it's doing exactly that, and those are the things that we need to be protecting and maintaining into it. So we've already got that piece, and that's, you know, we need to make sure, as we said, that it's got the funding to keep going. So
Anybody else want that? Shani?
Hello, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, the report speaks for themselves as far as the outreach, and that's really positive to hear that they're going to go back into the community to spread. I just think with anything, and not just Network Ryde, but just as a whole, it's always good to have feedback in on more than just the reports from the staff. So those comments are really useful. I feel that as a town council, there may be a skill sets with slightly outside of the staff directly for the Network Ryde that might be able to cross over even more than they're already doing. And with any money, the public wants to make sure that there is benefit wider, so we just need to keep up that level of just double checking, but in a way that's supportive and encouraging rather than detrimental. Thank you.
It's fully supportive of Michael's motion, and it's a well needed service that we can't lose.
I'll just, of course we're supportive of Network Ryde, always have been. We bought the church in the first place from the get-go with the idea of putting the youth services, that's the first thing. We now spend about $250,000 a year on our youth services. We're about 1.5 million, so we're about 15% down. Our total budget goes on youth service. That's a commitment. Always has been. As Michael said, he's still around. I think Tim was a councillor in this council who drove the youth service for this town council. And I thanked him a number of times, even though we had our moments, Tim and I, for doing that. And I can't see our council taking a different view. My one concern, that's all the good news. My one concern is, but my one concern is we are talking about ring fence funding and consideration preset. I'm less bothered about that, but ring fence, I'm beginning to get worried because that starts to shape the way you develop your budget. So my only comment on this is ring fencing a budget for the youth service it could be problematic. That's all. That said, I'm extraordinary, and it's difficult for me now. You know, of course, I want to support this. But I don't really want to ring fence it because it's always been our biggest spend apart from staffing on this council, probably always will be without having a ring fence. So I'm a bit torn, Michael, whether I should. I've got to support it really, but there's my concerns. I don't really want to ring fence. I'd like to take what we need for the service into account in our budget setting, as we've done every year. And plan for it. So there we are. That's my comment.
Thank you. I personally agree with that. Chris, we've got 5 minutes unless we extend the meeting.
Just be a 2 seconds one. I thoroughly support what Michael said, and I take into account what Phil's said about ring fencing and everything. But it's not just about the money; it's the ripple effect of that.
Yeah.
Whatever the money you give, it's the ripple effect, how that goes out through the community. It affects the parents, it affects the brothers and sisters, and everything like that. It's not just for a service, it's the whole thing. But I'm 100% behind the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very, very brief. Before I joined the political pantomime, I got a fully paid up ticket for this. I was a radio DJ and presenter, certainly was. I was working over at Power FM at the time, and a friend of mine on one of the doors at the nightclub said, "Listen, mate, would you come over and do some DJ lessons at what was a very rundown youth service in Portsmouth?" So I went along, didn't charge them, and I did it for about 3 or 4 months, and it was incredibly good fun. I wish I still had the letter now, but about 4 months after I finished, there was a letter waiting at the station that said, the radio station, saying, thank you very much for your interaction and time. My son wants to be a DJ now, obviously. He doesn't do drugs anymore, he doesn't beat up his sister, and he doesn't carry a knife. So, picking up from where Councillor Jenkins left off, there is a ripple effect. How many other people has that young man now positively affected in his life and hasn't negatively affected? It's very easy to look at spreadsheets, and I obviously understand the financial implications, but KPIs and stuff in business and corporate and stuff like that, it's difficult to quantify physical results, but I think the results of Network Ryde speak for themselves. We need to open the doors a little bit more, give it a bit more marketing, shape it up a little bit, get more bums on seats, but it is one, and well, you said it is the jewel in the crown of Ryde. And we are the ones that are able to push that forward. But of all things that Ryde Town Council can do, it's in our remit to do, we can do. So you have my support tonight, Michael. Thank you.
Are we ready to take a vote at 3 minutes to 9? Fantastic.
Has it been seconded?
Yes, it's been seconded several times. Okay. All those in favour? Yay! And anybody against? No. We can't be against Network Ryde, can we?
Chair, I'm sorry, I know this is unusual, but I've done that because the prioritisation should include consideration of. So I can get away with that. Consideration is okay for me. Thanks, Mark.
There was no any abstain.
I abstain.
Okay. Right, well, thank you very much, everybody. I can't believe that we've somehow managed to get through a big thing. Dates of the next meeting. So, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll sign the minutes.